The original issue is not appetite, it's regulation. Appetite is not a problem. Having appetite is not a problem. In fact, one of the things we want to learn how to do is embrace a huge appetite for food, for life, for pleasure, for everything. Hello and welcome to another new episode of Emotional Eating Unwrapped. I'm your host, Alana Kessler, and let's be honest for 1 second. We've all heard so much about GLP-1s, and this episode is going to be referencing and kind of about GLP-1s, but it's going to be a little bit different. But I know that the conversation about GLP-1s is everywhere. And at this point, myself included, many people are just tired of hearing the same talking points over and over. So this is not another episode villainizing GLP-1s, talking about whether or not they work, because the truth of the matter is that they do work. For many people, they do. I'm not going to villainize GLP-1s, but what almost gets overridden, and I think what's important to bring up to the surface, is what changes underneath when they work, when they actually do their job, when the appetite actually becomes less dramatic, becomes less loud in your brain. So we're going to talk today about the part when food is no longer doing the same emotional job that it used to do, right? Because the truth of the matter is that it has been doing an emotional job. It has been covering up things. We're going to talk about why that sense of control that you feel feels different and might even feel good in some way, but it doesn't always feel solid. We're going to talk about why stress still exists and how to navigate that when the old outlet is gone, that old food outlet. And we're going to talk about how pleasure and motivation subtly shifts, because these are not the side effects of GLP-1s that you read on a label or in those Mounjaro and Ozempic commercials with those jingles that you see on repeat all the time on YouTube TV. I don't know if I'm just talking about myself, but I definitely see so many of those. And these are not the side effects that they talk about. They mostly talk about the physical side effects, the physiological side effects. But there are real, true, important psychological shifts that you feel in your body, actually viscerally in your body. And if you don't know how to name them, if you don't understand them, these feelings and these sensations and experiences can feel confusing. They can feel unsettling. It's important that even if you are on a GLP-1 to understand these, so you can get a better result, you can sustain a better result. So today I want to name and talk about we're going to talk about 3 emotional changes that GLP-1s create. And like I said, I'm not criticizing the medication in any way. I just want to talk honestly about what actually changes when hunger does stop being the loudest thing in your mind, right? When food in this obsessive or fear-based way stops being something that takes up a lot of your mental energy, because that is, one of the big results. And I think one of the benefits, and I think one of the things that people are happy about when it comes to GLP-1s. All right. So before we jump in, if you are new to me, my name is Alana Kessler. I am a registered dietitian. I'm a functional dietitian. I've been in this health, the wellness space, the mindfulness space for 20 plus years. I've worked clinically. I've owned my own yoga studio, or I taught many yoga and mindfulness classes for years and years. I've done so many things, but over the last decade plus at this point, my passion is helping people find love with their body, lose weight, reconnect with themselves, and overcome any kind of emotional or addictive behavior with food, and really just allow yourself and create the conditions so you can live your best life, because that is what you were put on this earth to do. Share your gifts, live your best life, be the most happy and best version of yourself. So if you are new here, welcome. If you have been listening to our other episodes before, if you're a regular listener, welcome back. Thank you so much for being here, and let's dive right in. All right. So the first change, they're more like emotional shifts, right? They're emotional shifts, changes. So however you want to relate to it. But the first one that I'm going to talk about is the relief that you feel is real, but the reward system feels off. Okay, so I think this is really nuanced and really important to name. I think this feels almost like something that's very hard to verbalize. So the first thing that people name when they go on GLP-1s that they have told me, I have family members, friends who've been on GLP-1s, and the first thing that they notice is relief, right? The food noise quiets, you're not negotiating with yourself all day. You stop thinking about your next meal while still eating the current one. That happens less and less. And this relief matters, right? But then something unexpected might happen. The quiet doesn't always translate into peace, right? There's still kind of this undercurrent of anxiety or an undercurrent of like flatness. You finish dinner and you don't feel pull to keep eating, right? You're not thinking about what your next snack is going to be in 30 minutes, but you also don't feel especially satisfied. And food, although it stops being the thing that you look forward to at the end of the day, you don't quite feel free. Which is weird, right? You're like, this is supposed to be freedom. So why do I feel blank? Like, why do I feel flat? Like I said before. And so here's what's happening with this. GLP-1s, they don't just affect hunger signals. They also dampen the reward anticipation around food. And this is really important to understand. This is the point, right? Hunger is one system and reward is another system. Okay, so GLP-1s, they don't only make your stomach feel full sooner, they also change how your brain expects pleasure from food. Okay, this is really important, this anticipation of pleasure. Okay, so before the medication, a lot of people had a very predictable pattern. Right? You'd think about dinner while you were still at work, right? That 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock slump would come and you'd think about dinner. You'd plan what you were going to eat. You'd feel that little lift in your body just imagining it. This is that anticipation, and it mattered. And so what's important is your brain wasn't just waiting for calories. That's not what it was just waiting for. It wasn't just waiting for calories for food volume. It was waiting for relief, for comfort, for excitement, for sensation, for a moment where the day finally slowed down maybe. That's reward anticipation, right? It's this is going to feel good feeling before you take the first bite. GLP-1s, they turn the volume down on that. So food doesn't pull you in the same way, right? You're not fantasizing about it. You're not counting down to it anymore. You're not getting that same dopamine hit from thinking about it. And this is where people get confused because on paper, this sounds great, right? Less obsession, less fixation. But in real life, it's different. In real life, it can feel like this. It can feel like you make dinner, you eat, you're full, but you don't get that sense of like, afterwards, right? You don't get that. That's all I could say. Like that sense of, right? You're not upset about it. You're not necessarily dissatisfied. You're just neutral. Okay. Which is a good place to be. But if you're not quite sure how to be in neutral, we're going to talk about this later, towards the end of the episode, it's not like a happy place yet. And so if food used to be how your nervous system shifted gears, if thinking about food, if eating food used to be how your nervous system shifted gears, right? From stress to resting, that neutrality can feel off. It can feel strange. And like I said, it's not bad. It's just very unfamiliar, right? The brain was used to food being a reliable reward, right? A guaranteed downshift, a way to mark the transition of your day from the end of one type of emotional experience, like effort, managing, proving, whatever, to another. When that reward anticipation drops, or when it goes away, when it doesn't have that transition, the nervous system doesn't automatically know what replaces it. So things that you might say to yourself, and if you say these things to yourself, you might be experiencing what I'm describing. People often say, like, I don't crave food anymore. Like, I'm not thinking about it. It's not making my heart race. It's not making my pulse race more, but my after work transition now feels kind of blah and empty. Another thing is like I eat because I know I should, not necessarily because I'm excited about it or because I want to. Some people say like I don't look forward to meals in the same way. And it's not necessarily a loss of joy. It's just more of like a change. Like I said, it's a change in the reward signaling, because the system that used to say, here's your relief, here's your pleasure, right? Like here's the anticipation, the thinking about food, and the eating food, the act of eating food, right? The system that used to do that, it's offline now. So it doesn't mean something's necessarily wrong. It just means that food was doing a lot more emotional work than you might have consciously realized. It was imprinted into your nervous system and the way that your rhythm was throughout the day. And now without this anticipation, your body, your nervous system, your physiology needs a new way to feel completion, to feel comfort, and to feel reward, right? It needs a new way to feel those things so that it can transition. It can make that downshift, okay? And it can also continue to create feelings of enthusiasm in your life. Because for a while, maybe that reward anticipation was what was creating enthusiasm in your life. So we have to find new ways to do that. You've built a good life. From the outside, it looks like you have it all together. You eat clean, you work hard, you take care of everyone. But there's this one area that still feels impossible to master, and that is food. You can eat perfectly all day and still end up in the kitchen at night wondering why you keep doing this. You promise yourself you'll start fresh tomorrow, and I know you mean it every single time. But the cycle, it always finds its way back, especially when you're stressed, when you're overwhelmed, or when you're just tired of being the one that's holding it all together. And I get it because I lived that way for years. And what I learned is this. The problem, it was never about food. It was the pressure underneath it, the perfectionism, the self-doubt, the part of me that never felt safe and secure to just be me. And that's why I created the sober eating sequence. It's a proven 3-phase method that rewires the emotional patterns and the belief systems driving overeating so you can relax, trust yourself around food, and release weight completely naturally, without force and without obsession. Because when your body feels secure, it lets go. The cravings quiet, the self-punishment, it softens, and food, it stops being the thing that you have to fix. This is not another plan. This isn't another rule book. It's a revolutionary transformation for your nervous system, for your body, and for your identity. So join the sober eating movement today. The second shift is that control, right? A feeling of control around your food, around your thoughts improves, but your self-trust, your true self-confidence doesn't automatically catch up. You're eating less, maybe you're stopping earlier, you're not compulsively eating, you're not eating huge portions or overdoing it on portions. Maybe you're making calmer choices, more, choices, you're not feeling as urgent around food. And so from the outside, it definitely can look like a sense of control, but inside, and this is only something that you yourself has to get honest about because no one on the outside, is going to know this. So this is really one of those things where I really invite you to be honest with yourself. If you are saying to yourself, I can do these things and I'm eating less, I'm stopping earlier, I have more control. And are you secretly thinking to yourself, I can do this because I'm on the medication, right? Because realistically, control, the expression of control and self-confidence and self-trust are not the same thing, especially now with GLP-1s, because GLP-1s, they create external regulation, right? You're getting something from the outside, something external, and you are having a much easier time and you're having an ability to regulate yourself and regulate your urges and choices and feel more control easier. But it's coming from something from the outside, which no judgment here, that's totally fine. But what happens is GLP-1s, they change your appetite signals due to the chemistry of the medication without requiring your nervous system to learn anything new yet. So what happens is behavior improves, but internal confidence, which is essentially a lack of internal confidence, a lack of internal anchoring, a lack of an internal sense of empowerment, is typically one of the core reasons why we emotionally overeat to begin with, and a root cause of some of these issues with eating and the symptom of weight gain from that. So it's really important to remember that that's really also what we want to experience. We don't just want the result. We don't just want the behavior change without the core root of it also changing. So the internal empowerment, the internal confidence doesn't automatically follow just because the behavior change, especially if it comes from an external source. So that's why a lot of people feel very uneasy about the idea of stopping, even if they're already at their goal weight and happy with the results. And I know plenty of people that, are reconciling being on a GLP-1 for the rest of their life because of this reason. And it doesn't make anybody weak. It's just they haven't developed the skill of regulating their own hunger yet, of creating the internal infrastructure to maintain this type of psychological and physiological ecosystem around food and their weight. Because again, the medication right now is doing the regulating. So unless this gap is addressed, unless this gap gets healed, gets supported, the fear around stopping completely makes sense, because self-trust is not built by results, by outcomes. And that's really important. I think, I've talked about this in other episodes, that weight loss and results are not going to give you that internal sense of agency, of self-confidence, of self-empowerment, of personal power. It's not going to give you that. Self-trust is not built by outcomes. It's built by repetition and agency in making your own choices and knowing that you are the one that is control of the regulation, that your choices, that your decisions, that your ability to be in control is coming from an internal source that is supportive, compassionate, and something that you can always pull the lever on and is flexible and something that you can control without something external. Okay. So before we move on to the third shift, I just want to remind you that we love making these podcast episodes for you, and we love when new people find our episodes. And the way that we have realized that more people find our episodes is when you, our listeners, rate 5 stars and review our podcast on Apple and Spotify, because then the algorithm is like, yes, this conversation is great. More people need to hear it. And because our topics are often so personal, a lot of people do come to the podcast, and we've gotten feedback that a lot of people feel in this alone place with a lot of this work, and the podcast has really helped them. So if this podcast has helped you, please rate us 5 stars and a review. And if you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe there as well, because we're growing there too. And some people just like to watch the podcast. I'm one of those podcast watchers as well. So thank you so much. All right, let's move on to shift number 3. So the third shift is that the stress, the anxiety, the emotional labor that food was doing, whatever the emotional undercurrent was that the food was doing, the behavior with food, the food obsession, the binging, if that's something that was a part of your journey or is a part of your journey, that emotional baggage, and I'm not saying that in a negative way, I'm just kind of saying that it's heavy, right? That emotional luggage needs to go somewhere. So though GLP-1s kind of dim the lights on hunger and urgency and, obsession with food and constant thinking about food, or constantly feeling like you are at the mercy of your cravings when you drive by a bakery, right? Though GLP-1s can reduce that, they don't reduce stress. They don't reduce emotional distress. Your nervous system is still going to get activated. you don't all of a sudden stop being activated, right? Work is still stressful. Relationships can still trigger you. Loneliness still shows up. Disappointment still happens. Fatigue still exists. And so stress is going to come and your body is going to look for relief. But now food isn't as reinforcing for you. The place where you're going to go for regulation, it shifts. And it's important to notice this. So you might notice that you're scrolling on your phone more. You might notice that you are online shopping more. You might notice that you're maybe obsessing more about other things. Maybe you're checking out mentally. Maybe you are micromanaging your employees, or you're micromanaging your work, or you're micromanaging anything, right? And so it's not like you're trading addictions. I think sometimes people say that, but it's more like a transfer of trying to regulate. It's a regulation transfer, essentially, right? It's the nervous system doing what it always does, trying to come back to baseline. It's just that in the past, food was your fastest route. And so when that route is kind of blocked, right? When that route gets nerve blocked, essentially, that's essentially what's happening. The system is going to look for another route. And so this tells us something really important, which is the original issue is not appetite, it's regulation. Appetite is not a problem. Having appetite is not a problem. In fact, one of the things we want to learn how to do is embrace a huge appetite for food, for life, for pleasure, for everything, right? So that's one of the things that we actually want to learn how to do, is to hold and create capacity for a huge appetite. So the original issue wasn't appetite and isn't appetite, it's regulation. And what GLP-1s do is it removes one regulator, but it does not teach you or give you the roadmap or give you the blueprint or give you support for new ones. Okay, that part has to be learned. That part has to be built internally. That part has to be developed. That is exactly what I teach in my sober eating sequence. That part has to be grown from the inside. It's important to also realize that this isn't just about GLP-1s, right? So I know we're talking mostly about GLP-1s, but there's a bigger picture, right? This shows up with every single weight loss method that creates control without building capacity. And so let me explain what that means. Control without building capacity means that you don't know how to feel things without reacting. So what you want to do is learn how to feel things, right, without reacting in a way that ends up sabotaging you or punishing you or putting you in a position where you are feeling bad about yourself. Every weight loss method, for the most part, diets, tracking apps, elimination diets, meal plans, coaches who give strict rules, even quote unquote lifestyle changes that are really just kind of like softer rules. They're sort of just thinly veiled rules. They all work the same way at first, okay? They reduce uncertainty. They remove choice. They basically tell your body and your brain, like, you don't need to do anything. Don't worry about it. I got this handled. And initially your nervous system loves that because the nervous system likes that because it's not feeling chaos anymore like it used to. But the thing is that the chaos was never really about food. It was about not feeling safe inside making decisions. Okay, that's really what caused the internal chaos, if you think about it. And that's a problem because learning how to make decisions and learning how to feel good about decisions, learning how to feel good about decisions that you make that end up leading to discomfort, all of these things that you learn how to do, this is how you build capacity. When a system like diet plans, tracking apps, elimination diets, all these things, when you use those things, and I'm talking specifically for weight loss, right? I'm not talking about performance athletes that have to follow specific rigid plans sometimes for their athletic performance. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking for regular, your regular Joe, your regular day-to-day person that wants a weight loss result, that's trying to feel in control over their eating habits, that end up following these things and these plans understands why it doesn't end up working long term, and also why the nervous system likes it in the beginning, because when an external system steps in for you, things calm down. Like I said, the chaos sort of quiets immediately. This again is another external structure that is replacing internal trust. Okay. And the difference between these weight loss methods that I just described and GLP-1s is that GLP-1s just do this biochemically instead of behaviorally. And so their system is they target the hormones that affect food obsession, that affect hunger, that affect that compulsion. But the mechanism is exactly the same. The regulation that you're feeling and the calm that you initially feel, of the chaos feeling like it went away, that feeling and that regulation, it lives outside of you. Okay, so as long as the structure is there, whether it's the plan, the rules, the medication, things will feel manageable, right? As long as you have that structure, that external construct. I'd rather call it a construct. When it's there, things feel manageable. But the moment that the construct loosens for whatever reason, say there's a health issue and you have to go off the medication, you're going on vacation with the family and you can't quite do the diet, the meal plan, you don't want to be taking injections or shots or things like that. Whatever it is, something environmental changes in your routine and the hunger will come back, right? The emotions will feel a lot more surface and unmanageable and reactive. Reactivity comes back. You'll start to be afraid of your appetite again. And the system, it doesn't know what to do really because it's never learned how to regulate from the inside. And so a lot of times the fear shows up almost like terror kind of, because you've spent so much time in this other state of being that your cells actually aren't used to this level of stimulation anymore, mental, psychological stimulation anymore. So fear shows up like, am I going to lose control? There's a lack of self-trust. Like, how am I going to eat? Like, can I trust myself? What's going to happen? And this is why maintenance oftentimes is harder than pursuing weight loss. It's why stopping any kind of diet or stopping to follow any kind of meal plan feels really scary. Why the idea of living without medication, without rules feels really dangerous. And this is why people cycle from one method to the next. And it's not because they didn't find the right plan, right? It's not even because there's something wrong with you or with them. It's because no plan, no medication ever taught the nervous system how to stay regulated without the plan, without the medication. Sustainable change, what makes weight loss sustainable, what makes feeling calm and easy and comfortable around food, what makes that happen? It doesn't come from like a tighter control. It doesn't come from sourcing something from the outside so that you can box it in more or it goes away. You nerve block it, like I said, with the injections. It just doesn't come from that. You might get the weight loss, but getting weight loss isn't the same as being in the body of someone who's lost the weight for life. To do that, you need to learn how to feel hungry without panicking about it, right? You need to learn how to feel satisfied with your food, feel excited about food and look forward to food without automatically switching into, oh my God, this must be an urgent feeling. I must have this immediately now and so much of it. You need to be able to not be black and white about it. And these are not mindset skills, actually. People often talk so much about like mindset, and there's definitely a mindset element to this as it relates to your own feeling of self-value. And that's something that I work on a lot with people and with clients in my programs. But these are not mindset skills when it comes to this. These are nervous system skills. These are behavioral skills. These are reactivity skills. So we could shift from reactivity to responsiveness. And they're built through feedback, repetition, the willingness to put yourself in the ring and engage with food, with life, get feedback and iterate and make choices, and repeating that over and over again, not a construct that someone gives you or necessarily a medication. So that's all I want to share today. Thank you so much for listening. Once again, please like and subscribe. If you are interested in leaving us any kind of reaction, reply, response to any of our episodes, you can leave us an anonymous voice note on SpeakPipe, which you can find in the show notes. It's like a voice voice note, voice message type of thing where we listen to your responses and we create episodes around them. And occasionally we will also use your question in our Q&A. Thanks again. I'm Alana, and I will see you in the next episode of Emotional Eating Unwrapped.